Taemin floated in the cargo bay of his ship, checking the manifest one more time. The route from Earth to the mining colonies near Jupiter was supposed to be safe. He had made this trip hundreds of times in the past 5 years. The stars looked the same as always, cold and distant against the black void of space. That was when his sensors went dark. The ship lurched violently to the side. Taemin grabbed onto a support beam as alarms screamed through the corridors. His hands moved quickly across the controls, trying to understand what was happening. Nothing made sense. There were no asteroids in this sector, no debris fields, no other ships on the scanner. Then he saw them. 3 massive vessels materialized from nowhere, their hulls covered in strange patterns that seemed to absorb light. They were unlike anything in the human databases. Taemin reached for the communication panel, but before his fingers touched the button, a bright light filled his vision. His body went numb. The last thing he remembered was the feeling of falling. Thousands of kilometers away, on Mars colony, Hana sat at her desk in the intelligence division. Her job was boring most days. She monitored space traffic, logged anomalies, and filed reports that nobody read. Today felt different. Her screen showed a blip that appeared for just 3 seconds before vanishing. The coordinates matched Taemin's last known position. She ran the data through analysis. PROTOCOs. Nothing. The system classified it as sensor noise. But Hana trusted her instincts. She had been doing this job for 8 years. Something was wrong. She filed a priority report and flagged it for Commander June's attention. In the HFY War Council chambers, millions of kilometers beyond human space, Velmoth stood before the assembled leaders of the Empire. His species had conquered 47 star systems. They had crushed civilizations that had traveled the stars for millennia. The humans would be easy. The specimens we captured confirm our assessment, Velmoth said, gesturing to the holographic display. It showed Taemin suspended in a containment field, unconscious. Their bodies are weak, fragile bones, limited sensory capacity. They require constant temperature regulation and specific atmospheric conditions to survive. Kirsa, his intelligence officer, added more data to the display. Their civilization is fractured. We have identified 214 separate governmental bodies on their primary world alone. Their colonies compete for resources. They waste energy on internal conflicts. They have no unified command structure. The council members made sounds of approval. This was exactly what they looked for in target species. Divided populations were easy to control. Weak bodies meant minimal resistance. The humans had spread across their solar system, which meant resources to harvest, but they lacked the unity to defend it. Their technology is primitive, Kirsa continued. Chemical rockets, kinetic weapons, basic nuclear fission. They have no energy shields, no faster-than-light capability. Their most powerful weapons would barely scratch our armor. Velmoth pulled up tactical projections. We will strike their outer colonies first. Europa, Titan, Ganymede. This will demonstrate our superiority. They will surrender within weeks. The conquest will take 6 months at most. Casualties on our side will be negligible. One council member, an old veteran named Terval, raised a question. What of their cultural data? Do they have warrior traditions? Kirsa dismissed this with a gesture. They fight among themselves over trivial matters, resources, ideology, territory. But their wars are small, localized. They have rules about what they can and cannot do in combat. They actually limit their own effectiveness. The intelligence officer's voice carried amusement. They have something called war crimes, where they punish their own soldiers for being too efficient. The council chamber filled with sounds that resembled laughter in the Krithik language. A species that handicapped itself in warfare was no threat at all. There is one concern. Terval said. The specimen fought his captors, even while sedated. His body released combat chemicals that nearly killed him. Is this normal? Velmoth checked the medical data. An autonomic response. Primitive. Their bodies flood with adrenaline when threatened, giving temporary increases in strength and pain tolerance. But it is uncontrolled, inefficient. It causes more harm than good to their own physiology. The vote was unanimous. The invasion would proceed. On Earth. June finally read Hana's report 3 days later. By then, Taemin had been missing for 72 hours. Search and rescue found his ship drifting near Jupiter empty. The cargo hold showed signs of forced entry, but there was no debris field. No bodies, no answers. June authorized an investigation but kept it quiet. No need to alarm the public over what was probably a pirate raid or corporate sabotage. Earth had enough problems without adding paranoia about mysterious disappearances. In orbit above Europa, Seung-ho was finishing his shift at the mining station. The ice moon surface stretched below, white and pristine. His crew had extracted 3 tons of water ice that day. Good numbers. Command would be pleased. He never saw the Krithik fleet arrive. The first indication was when the station's sensors registered multiple massive objects dropping out of faster-than-light travel. Seung-ho's training kicked in. He hit the emergency broadcast button. This is Europa Station 1 to all frequencies. We have unknown vessels. The transmission ended when the Krithik weapons turned the station into vapor. Across the solar system, every human receiver picked up those final words. Europa Station 1. Unknown vessels. Then silence. Velmoth watched from his command ship as the station disappeared. Broadcast our terms to all human colonies. They have 24 hours to surrender. The message went out in 17 human languages. The Krithak had done their research. They expected panic, chaos, perhaps some desperate last stands from military units, but nothing organized. What they got instead was silence. No surrender. No pleas for mercy. No response at all. Kier single quotes essay found this puzzling. Should we destroy another station to encourage compliance? Velmoth considered this. Give them time. Fear needs time to spread. But something was happening across human space that the Krithik did not understand. On Earth, every government received the same data. Every military analyzed the same transmission. Every corporation saw the same threat. The arguments stopped. The competition ended. The old grudges were set aside. Hana stood in the emergency command center on Mars, watching the feeds from Earth. June's face appeared on her screen. Get everyone to battle stations, he said quietly. This is not a drill. The assessment period was over. The Krithik had made their evaluation. They had calculated the odds. They had determined that humanity would fall easily. They were about to learn how wrong an assessment could be. The Krithak deadline passed with no human response. Velmoth gave the order to proceed with the demonstration. 3 battle cruisers moved toward the mining colonies in the Jupiter system. Their mission was simple: destroy enough infrastructure to break human morale, then wait for the surrender. Seung-ho had survived the initial attack on Europa Station 1 by pure chance. He had been in the lower maintenance shaft when the weapons hit. The explosion threw him across the compartment and knocked him unconscious. When he woke, he was floating in what remained of the mining vessel Lucky Dragon. Half the ship was gone. Emergency systems were failing. He had maybe 2 hours of oxygen left out through the cracked viewport. He saw the Krithik ships moving between the orbital platforms. They were methodical, destroying each structure with single shots. No warnings. No hesitation. Seung-ho watched 500 people die in the span of 10 minutes. His communications panel crackled to life. It was Mira, broadcasting from Earth on an emergency frequency. Her voice was calm despite the chaos. All surviving personnel in the Jupiter sector. Military reinforcements are 6 hours out. If you can fight, fight. If you cannot fight, survive. We are coming for you. Earth stands united. We will not surrender. Sung-ho looked at his fuel gauges. The Lucky Dragon was a mining ship, not a warship. But it had engines. It had mass. And there was a Krithik cruiser less than 20 kilometers away, focused on destroying a communications relay. He did the math in his head. The angle was right. The velocity would work. He would hit them before they could react. Sung-ho smiled. 2 hours of oxygen did not matter if he did not plan to breathe it. He fired every thruster at maximum burn. The Lucky Dragon accelerated toward the Krithak vessel. Alarms screamed warnings about structural stress. Sung-ho ignored them. He armed the mining charges in the cargo hold. They were designed to crack ice. They would do fine against alien armor. The Krithik cruiser detected him at the last moment. Their weapons turned, but mining ships are small and fast when they want to be. Sung-ho was already too close. The Lucky Dragon struck the cruiser's midsection at 17,000 kilometers per hour. The mining charges detonated on impact. The explosion tore through both ships. Debris scattered across 100 kilometers of space. There were no survivors on either vessel. The billions of humans watched the footage. Sung-ho's final transmission had been simple. First blood is ours. On the Krithak command ship, Kirsa replayed the collision 3 times. This makes no sense. He had escape pods. He could have fled. Why would he destroy himself? Velmoth stared at the tactical display. They had lost a cruiser, a full crew, to a mining ship piloted by one human who chose death over survival. Perhaps it was a malfunction, a desperate act by a cornered animal. Or perhaps, Kirsa said quietly, we have misunderstood something about this species. On Earth, June watched the same footage in the command center. His staff was quiet. Someone in the back of the room started clapping. Then another. Within seconds, the entire center was applauding. Not celebrating death, but acknowledging sacrifice. June turned to his tactical officers. Status of our forces? 5th Fleet is moving to Jupiter. 8th and 9th Fleets are holding defensive positions around Mars and Earth. The moon batteries are online. All civilian vessels have been recalled to safe zones. How many fighters can we launch? 3,000 within the hour. Another 2,000 in 6 hours. June nodded. Da-1 Squadron leads the first wave. Tell her the objective is simple. Kill as many as possible. Da-1 received her orders while strapping into the cockpit of her fighter. The briefing was short. The enemy was superior in every way. Better shields. Better weapons. Better armor. Her squadron of 60 fighters was going up against a Krithak battle group that included 12 warships. She checked her weapons. 4 missiles. 2 plasma cannons. 1 reactor that could overload if she pushed it too hard. Against Krithak shields, these might as well be fireworks. All wings, this is the one. I am not going to lie to you. Most of us will die today. Maybe all of us. But we are going to make them remember this fight. We are going to make them pay for every meter of space they take. We are going to show them what humans do when you threaten our home. Her wing leader, a pilot named Rock, responded. We are with you, Commander. All the way to hell if that is where this goes. The fighters launched from the carrier Indomitable. They accelerated toward the Krithak formation at maximum burn. Da-1 knew the aliens could see them coming. Knew they were probably laughing at the small swarm of primitive craft. The Krithak opened fire at maximum range. Da-1's tactical display lit up with warnings. 3 fighters vanished in the first salvo. 5 more in the second. The aliens were good shots. Break formation. Attack pattern random. Do not give them predictable targets. Her fighters scattered. This was not the neat, organized combat that Krithek expected. Human pilots twisted and rolled and dove in patterns that had no logic. They wasted fuel on maneuvers that seemed pointless. They made themselves harder to hit by sacrificing efficiency. Day 1 locked onto the nearest cruiser. Her missiles would not penetrate the shields, but they did not need to. She aimed for the sensor arrays visible on the hull. The missiles impacted and destroyed the delicate equipment. The cruiser was not crippled, but it was partially blind. Target their eyes. Target their communications. Make them confused. 60 fighters became 40. 40 became 25. But the Krithak formation was breaking apart. Ships were colliding as their coordination failed. They were shooting at ghosts as human fighters used the debris field for cover. Dawan's fighter took a hit. Her left engine exploded. She was venting atmosphere. The cockpit was filling with smoke. She had maybe 30 seconds before systems failure. Her target was right in front of her. A Krithak destroyer, shields down for just a moment as it rerouted power to weapons. Dawan armed her reactor overload and locked the controls forward. For Sumho, for Earth, for everyone who will come after us. Her fighter struck the destroyer's bridge at ramming speed. The reactor detonation opened a hole in the ship's armor 20 meters wide. It did not destroy the destroyer, but it would be in repair docks for months. When the battle ended 2 hours later, only 8 of De Win's original 60 fighters had survived. But the Krithak had lost 3 cruisers, 2 destroyers, and 14 support ships. Their formation was in ruins. Their admiral was dead, and humanity was broadcasting the battle footage to every colony in the solar system. Myra watched the coverage from her lab on Earth. She was not a soldier. She was an engineer who designed mining equipment. But now her workshop was full of weapons. She had converted industrial lasers into cutting beams, turned construction drones into missile platforms, reprogrammed navigation systems to work as targeting computers. Her supervisor had asked her if she felt guilty about weaponizing civilian technology. Myra's answer was simple. I feel guilty that I did not do it sooner. Across Earth, millions of people like Mira were making the same choice. Teachers were training in field medicine. Programmers were hacking Krithak communications. Farmers were growing food for military rations. The entire species was mobilizing for war. Velmoth sat in his command chamber, reviewing casualty reports. In 3 days of fighting, the Krithak had lost more ships than they had in the last 20 years of conquest. The humans were not surrendering. They were not negotiating. They were barely even communicating. Every message from Earth said the same thing. We do not accept your terms. Leave our space or die. Kirsa entered with new intelligence. Their manufacturing capacity has tripled. They are building weapons faster than we are destroying them. And their tactics are evolving. They learn from each engagement. They cannot win, Velmoth said, but his voice carried doubt. We outnumber them. We have better technology. Yes, Kirsa agreed. But they do not fight to win. They fight to make us lose. There's a difference. The war was only beginning. And the Krithak were starting to realize they had awakened something that should have been left alone. 3 months into the war, Bio Young sat in her laboratory, deep beneath the surface of Mars. Around her, samples of Krithak biology floated in containment fields. She had been a medical researcher before the invasion, working on treatments for genetic diseases. Now she was building weapons that no war convention had ever imagined. The sample in front of her was tissue from a Krithak soldier killed at Titan. Bio Young had spent 6 weeks mapping its cellular structure. She found weaknesses. Every living thing had them. The Krithak were no exception. Their metabolism requires a specific enzyme, she explained to her assistant over the video link. Without it, their bodies cannot process nutrients. They starve at the cellular level. Can we create an inhibitor? I already have. Airborne. Fast-acting. Non-lethal, but completely debilitating within hours. Bo Young held up a vial of clear liquid. It causes pain. Constant, severe pain. They will not die from it, but they will wish they could. Her assistant looked uncomfortable. Is this not against the rules of war? Bo Young set down the vial and looked directly at the camera. They destroyed Europa Station without warning. They killed 500 civilians to make a point. There are no rules anymore. There is only survival. The bioweapon went into production 3 days later. It would be deployed on the next Krithik landing attempt. Meanwhile, on Earth, Hyan led his Special Forces team through the ruins of what had been Sydney. The Krithik had occupied the city for 2 weeks. They thought it was secure. They were wrong. Hyan's team moved through the tunnels beneath the city like ghosts. They did not wear uniforms. They did not follow standard combat procedures. They were fighting a war that the Krithik did not understand. Target is the communication hub, Hyan whispered into his radio. We going fast. No survivors. His team emerged from the sewers inside the Krithak compound. The aliens had sensors and shields, but they never expected an attack from below. Humans had built these cities. They knew every tunnel, every service corridor, every weak point. The battle lasted 4 minutes. Hyan's team used knives and silenced weapons. They moved through the compound like a surgical strike, killing sentries before they could raise alarms. When they reached the communication hub, Hyan planted enough explosives to level the entire building. They were back in the tunnels before the Krithak even knew they had been attacked. The explosion collapsed 3 city blocks. The occupying force lost their only link to the fleet above. Across the planet, similar attacks were happening every hour. The Krithak held the cities, but humans owned everything underneath them. The aliens could not sleep safely, could not trust their sensors, could not predict where the next strike would come from. Velmoth reviewed the casualty reports with growing concern. We control 6 major population centers on Earth. Why are our losses increasing instead of decreasing? Kirsa pulled up surveillance footage. They do not fight conventionally. Watch this. The footage showed a Krithik patrol in what had been Beijing. The streets appeared empty. Then, suddenly, the buildings exploded. Not from missiles or bombs, but from charges planted inside the structures themselves. The humans had booby-trapped their own city. The patrol was buried under tons of rubble. They destroy their own infrastructure to kill our soldiers, Kirsa said. They abandon their homes without hesitation. They care nothing for property or monuments, only for killing us. In orbit above Earth, a different kind of warfare was evolving. Kai was 16 years old. Before the war, he had been a hacker, breaking into corporate databases for fun. Now he sat in a bunker beneath Seoul, surrounded by servers and screens, fighting a digital war against an alien empire. I am in their fleet network again, Kai said to his team. They keep changing the encryption, but they use mathematical logic. Predictable logic. We use chaos. We win. His fingers flew across the keyboard. Within seconds, he had access to the targeting systems of a Krithik battleship. He did not sabotage it directly. That would be noticed. Instead, he introduced tiny errors into their calculations. A degree off here. A fractional delay their dot the next time the battleship fired its weapons. The shots missed by meters. Small errors, but enough. Enough to give human fighters the advantage they needed. Kai's network had grown to include thousands of hackers across the solar system. They operated independently, but shared information constantly. The Krithik had never encountered this type of warfare. Their command structure was hierarchical and rigid. They could not adapt to the chaos that human hackers created. On Titan, June stood on the command deck of the battleship Retribution. The moon's orange atmosphere swirled outside the viewports. Below, the Krithik had established a forward base, expecting to use Titan as a staging ground for further invasions. They had not expected humans to bring a battleship into atmosphere. All batteries, fire at will. June ordered. The Retribution's guns opened up. Kinetic rounds traveling at hypersonic speeds turned the Krithik base into a crater. The aliens tried to return fire, but their weapons were designed for space combat. In atmosphere, their accuracy was terrible. June had studied the enemy, learned their tactics, understood their assumptions. The Krithik fought wars the way they had always fought them, with overwhelming force and superior technology. But they had never fought an enemy willing to turn every rule upside down. "Sir, the Krithik fleet is moving to intercept us," his tactical officer reported. "Good. Prepare the surprise." As the Krithak ships entered Titan's atmosphere in pursuit, Mira's weapons activated. She had designed them specifically for this moment. Drones hidden in Titan's clouds released electromagnetic pulses, not powerful enough to damage the Krithik ships, but enough to interfere with their shields and sensors. Then the Retribution fired its real payload, thousands of small kinetic projectiles. Individually, they were worthless against shields, but the shields were flickering from the EMP interference, and there were so many projectiles that even Krithak point defense could not stop them all. 3 Krithak cruisers were crippled in the first minute. 2 more tried to climb back into orbit and collided with each other in the thick atmosphere. The rest retreated. For the first time since the war began, the Krithik had lost a major battle without inflicting significant human casualties. In the Krithik command ship, Kirsa presented her analysis to the council. "We have underestimated them at every turn. They do not fight the way warfare is supposed to be fought. They use tactics we would never consider because they are inefficient or dishonorable or too costly. Then we adapt," Velma said. "We change our tactics to match theirs." "We cannot," Kirsa replied quietly. "Our entire military structure is built on principles of efficiency and logic. We have rules about acceptable losses and strategic value. The humans have abandoned all such rules. They will sacrifice 1,000 soldiers to kill 10 of ours, and they consider it a victory." One of the council members spoke up. "Surely they must run out of soldiers eventually. They cannot sustain these losses forever." Kirsa pulled up the data on human population and manufacturing capacity. "Their losses are severe, yes, but their entire civilization is mobilized for war. Every factory is producing weapons. Every citizen is a potential soldier. And more concerning, they are learning. Each engagement, they develop new tactics. They reverse engineer our technology. They adapt faster than any species we have encountered." The council chamber fell silent. Velmoth made a decision he never thought he would make. "Pull back our forward positions. Consolidate our forces. We will establish a defensive perimeter and negotiate from a position of strength." Kirsa hesitated. "Commander, the humans have not responded to any diplomatic overtures. They have rejected every ceasefire proposal. I am not certain they will negotiate." "Then what would you suggest?" "Retreat. Full withdrawal. Before this gets worse." "Worse?" The Moth's voice carried disbelief. "We still outnumber them. We still have superior technology. How could it possibly get worse?" Kirsa displayed the latest intelligence reports. Human ships were being built at an accelerating rate. Human weapons were incorporating captured Krithak technology. And most concerning, human forces were no longer just defending. They were preparing for an offensive. "They are not fighting to survive anymore," Kirsa said. "They are fighting to destroy us, completely. And I believe they might succeed." On Earth, in a command bunker that had once been a school, June received reports from every front. Titan was secured. The orbital battles were turning in humanity's favor. Ground forces had pushed the Krithak out of 3 occupied cities. "How long before we can launch the counteroffensive?" he asked. His staff exchanged glances. This was the moment they had been working toward. 3 months of hell. 3 months of sacrifice. But they had not just survived. They had learned. They had adapted. They had become something the Krithak never expected. 2 weeks, his chief of staff reported. "We will be ready to take the fight to them in 2 weeks." June nodded slowly. "Then make sure every soldier understands. We are not just defending Earth anymore. We are going to make sure the Krithak never threaten anyone again. We are going to teach the galaxy what happens when you underestimate humanity." The war was about to enter a new phase. The hunters were about to become the hunted. Admiral Sunya stood on the bridge of the warship Vengeance, watching her fleet assemble. 60 ships. The largest offensive force humanity had ever launched into deep space. Every vessel had been built or retrofitted in the past 4 months. They carried weapons that combined human ingenuity with stolen Krithak technology. They were crude compared to the alien ships, but they were numerous and crewed by people who had nothing left to lose. "All ships report ready for jump," her navigation officer announced. Sunya had been a cargo hauler captain before the war. She had transported grain and manufacturing supplies between Earth and the colonies. Now she commanded humanity's vengeance. She had lost her family when the Krithak bombed Tokyo. That pain had turned into something cold and focused. Set course for the Krithak supply depot at Kepler to 442. All ships jump in 30 seconds. The fleet vanished from human space in a flash of twisted light. Faster-than-light travel was new for humanity. The technology had been reverse-engineered from captured Krithak vessels. It was unstable and dangerous, but it worked well enough. They emerged in the Kepler system 18 hours later. The Krithak supply depot was exactly where intelligence said it would be. A massive orbital station surrounded by cargo ships and light escorts. "They are not expecting us," Sunya observed. "They still think humans are confined to our own system." Attack formation. Hit the station first. Then the cargo ships. No survivors. The Krithak defenders responded quickly, but they were designed to repel pirate raids, not a full military assault. Sunya's ships tore through their defenses like paper. Human gunners had learned to focus fire, concentrating on one target until it was destroyed before moving to the next. The supply depot tried to raise its shields, but Jai's hackers were already inside the system. The shields flickered and failed. Human missiles found their targets. Explosions rippled across the station's hull. Sunya watched the station break apart. Thousands of Krithak were dying. She felt nothing. No remorse. No satisfaction. Just cold calculation. This depot supplied 5 Krithak battle groups. Without it, those groups would be stranded and vulnerable. Move to the cargo ships. Destroy them all. On the surface of a Krithak colony world called Rathanar, Wu Jin led his strike team through the industrial sector. They had infiltrated the planet using a captured Krithak transport. The aliens never suspected that humans could penetrate this deep into their territory. The mission was simple. Sabotage the munitions factories. Make the Krithak afraid in their own space. Wu Jin's team moved through the factory complex using the same guerrilla tactics that had worked on Earth. They planted explosives on support structures, contaminated fuel supplies, released Bo Young's bioweapon into the ventilation systems. But they also did something else. Something designed to create fear. They left messages, written in Krithak script, translated by captured linguists. Simple messages. We are here. We are watching. Nowhere is safe. When the factories exploded 6 hours later, Krithak workers found the messages spray-painted on walls, carved into metal, displayed on computer screens. The psychological impact was devastating. If humans could reach this deep into Krithak space, if they could strike at industrial worlds light years from Earth, then nowhere was truly secure. Woojin's team extracted successfully, but he made sure the Krithak saw them leave. Made sure they knew humans had been there. Fear was a weapon, and he wielded it expertly. On the Krithak homeworld, Raltek was trying to understand how everything had gone so wrong. He was a military theorist, responsible for analyzing enemy capabilities and predicting outcomes. He had approved the initial invasion plan. He had agreed that humans were soft targets. Now he was writing a very different kind of report. The humans exhibit a paradox, he wrote. As individuals, they are weak, divided, and prone to conflict. But when threatened as a collective, they unify with a speed and completeness that should be impossible. Their internal divisions do not make them weak. They make humans unpredictable and adaptive. He reviewed footage from 100 battles. In every case, humans had done something unexpected. Ramming attacks, suicide runs, weapons that violated basic military efficiency, tactics that wasted resources but achieved strategic goals. They do not optimize for survival, Raltek continued. They optimize for victory, even if that victory costs them everything. A Krithak soldier will retreat when odds fall below acceptable levels. A human soldier will fight until they are dead. This gives them an advantage we cannot counter with simple force. His report went to the High Command. It was ignored. The generals insisted that humans were still inferior, that the war could still be won with enough resources committed to it. Raltek knew better. He had studied Earth's history, recovered from their databases. Humans had fought wars against themselves for thousands of years. They had developed tactics and strategies and weapons through constant, brutal conflict. The Krithak had fought primitive species and won easily. They had no experience against an enemy like this. When Bo Young's bioweapon was deployed on a Krithak-held world, the results exceeded expectations. The airborne agent spread through the colony in days. Krithak soldiers began reporting symptoms: pain, disorientation, muscle spasms. Not lethal, but completely debilitating. The Krithak military tried to develop a treatment, but Bo Young had designed the weapon to be adaptive. It mutated slightly in each host, making a universal cure impossible. Infected soldiers could not fight, could not work, could barely function. Some Krithak commanders did the unthinkable. They surrendered their positions, requested medical assistance from human forces. This had never happened in Krithak history. Surrender was considered the ultimate dishonor, but humans had taught them a new calculus. Dishonor was better than constant agony. June watched as the first Krithak prisoners were processed at the facility on Mars. They looked defeated, broken. These were soldiers from a species that had conquered dozens of worlds, and they were begging for help. Treat their injuries, June ordered. Give them water and food, but keep them separated. I want intelligence from every one of them. His officers looked surprised. Sir, after what they did, we are not them, June said firmly. We fight without mercy, but we do not torture prisoners. We are still human. Remember that. The interrogations revealed critical information. Krithak supply lines, fleet positions, command codes. The prisoners talked freely, hoping for relief from their suffering. Bo Young's bioweapon had a cure, and humans were willing to provide it in exchange for cooperation. Sunya's fleet struck 3 more Krithak positions over the following weeks. Each attack was brutal and efficient. She had learned from Velmoth's mistakes. Never give the enemy time to adapt. Keep them off balance. Hit them where they are weak. The Krithik tried to rally their forces, but human hackers disrupted their communications. Human saboteurs destroyed their infrastructure. Human ships attacked from unexpected angles at unexpected times, and the bioweapon continued spreading. Not everywhere, not all at once, but enough to create paranoia. Krithak soldiers started refusing to engage in ground operations. They did not know which worlds were infected, did not know if the air they breathed was safe. In the Krithik council chambers, Velmoth finally admitted the truth. We are losing. Not slowly, not gradually. We are being systematically destroyed by a species we classified as primitive 4 months ago. The council members did not argue. They had all seen the reports, the casualty figures, the lost territories, the surrendered positions. We should sue for peace, one council member suggested. They will not accept, Kirsa said. I have been monitoring their communications. They are not interested in coexistence. They want us eliminated as a threat, permanently. Then, we fight to the last, another council member declared. Velmoth shook his head. To what end? So we can say we died with honor? Our species faces extinction if this continues. I propose we offer unconditional surrender. The chamber erupted in protest. Surrender was unthinkable, disgraceful, against every principle of Krithak culture. But Kirsa supported Velmoth. Our culture will not matter if we are all dead. The humans have proven they can reach our homeworld. They have proven they can destroy our infrastructure. And they have proven they will not stop until we are no longer a threat. The vote was close, but surrender won by a narrow margin. The message was transmitted to every human command center. The Krithik Empire requests terms of surrender. We acknowledge defeat. We seek only survival. June read the message 3 times to make sure he understood it correctly. Then he forwarded it to the civilian government on Earth. This was no longer a military decision. This was about the future of both species. The response took 6 hours to formulate. It came directly from the emergency coalition government that now ruled humanity. Unconditional surrender accepted. All Krithak forces will withdraw from human space immediately. All Krithak technology will be shared freely. All war criminals will be turned over for trial. The Krithak Empire is dissolved. Your species will exist under human supervision until we determine you are no longer a threat. Refusal of these terms means war continues until your species is extinct. You have 24 hours to comply. When Velmoth read the terms, he understood what humans had become. They had been pushed to the edge of extinction. 1 year after the surrender, Earth looked different. The planet's surface still bore scars from the Krithak bombardment. Cities were being rebuilt, but the architecture had changed. Everything now included bunkers, shields, and defensive systems. Humanity would never again be caught unprepared. Jiwoo walked through the halls of the new Galactic Council building in Geneva. She had been a trade negotiator before the war, skilled at finding compromises between competing interests. Now she represented humanity to a galaxy that had suddenly become aware of Earth's existence. The council chamber was filled with representatives from 17 different species. They had all arrived within weeks of the Krithak surrender, eager to establish diplomatic relations with the humans who had defeated the galaxy's most feared military power. They were also terrified. Jiwoo took her seat at the head of the table. The position had been offered to her without debate. Nobody wanted to argue with the species that had turned the Krithak Empire into a protectorate in 4 months. Thank you all for attending, Jiwoo began. I understand you have questions about humanity's intentions. Let me be clear about our position. She activated a holographic display. It showed human territory, the Sol system, and a buffer zone extending 30 light-years in all directions. This is our space. We claim no territory beyond this zone. We have no interest in conquest or expansion. We want only to be left alone. A representative from the Vextari collective, a species that resembled crystalline insects, spoke up. And if we do not leave you alone? What then? Ji Woo's expression did not change. Then we will demonstrate again why that is a mistake. We do not want war, but we are very, very good at it. Another representative, this one from the aquatic Nemdari, asked the question they were all thinking. What have you done with the Krithik? They exist under our supervision, Ji Woo replied. Their military has been disbanded. Their technology is being shared with us. Their homeworld is administered by a joint human Krithik council. Those who committed war crimes are being tried. The rest are being educated. Educated in what? In why their approach to the galaxy was wrong. In how to coexist peacefully. In the consequences of underestimating other species. Ji Woo paused. We are not interested in revenge. But we are very interested in making sure this never happens again. She pulled up another display. This one showed a document written in 17 languages. This is the human doctrine. It is simple. Leave us alone. We leave you alone. Trade with us if you wish. Cooperate on matters of mutual interest. But never, ever threaten our survival. Because if you do, we will respond with everything we have. No rules, no limits, no mercy. The chamber was silent. The representatives understood the message. Humanity was offering peace, but it was a peace backed by the proven ability to destroy civilizations. On Mars, Young-Soo was compiling the final sections of his historical record. He had been documenting the war from the beginning, collecting footage and interviews and data from every battle. His work would become the definitive account of humanity's first interstellar war. He reviewed footage from the early days. Europa Station's destruction. Sunho's sacrifice. Dawan's impossible fighter attack. So much death. So much suffering, but also so much courage, so much adaptation, so much proof that humanity could face extinction and choose to fight rather than submit. The final casualty count is 2 billion, Young-Soo narrated into his recording. 2 billion humans dead, entire cities destroyed, colonies wiped out, families erased. The Krithik expected us to break under this pressure. They did not understand the pressure is what makes humans dangerous. They pulled up economic data. Before the war, human civilization was fragmented, competitive, inefficient. The war changed that. We learned to cooperate on a species-wide level. We learned to share resources and technology without regard for profit or national advantage. We learned that survival matters more than anything else. Young-Soo's final chapter was about the aftermath, about the trials, about the Krithak soldiers and leaders who faced justice for their actions, but it was also about reconciliation, about the Krithak civilians who had never wanted war, about the children who would grow up in a galaxy where their species no longer ruled through fear. He interviewed Nerval, a Krithik who had become an advocate for peace. Nerval had been a civilian administrator during the war, working in food distribution. He had watched his civilization collapse and understood why. We were arrogant, Nerval said in the interview. We thought our technology made us superior. We thought our military victories proved we were the strongest. We never considered that strength comes from many sources. Do you believe humanity will treat your species fairly? Young-Soo asked. I believe humans are angry. Rightfully so. But I also believe they are trying to be just. They could have exterminated us. Many of their people wanted exactly that. But their leaders chose a different path. Nerval paused. I hope we can prove worthy of that mercy. Taemin returned to Earth 13 months after his capture. The Krithik had kept him in a research facility, studying human biology and psychology. He had been unconscious for most of it, but the experience had left scars. When he landed at the spaceport in Seoul, there were cameras and reporters and crowds. He was the first human to encounter the Krithik, the first prisoner, a symbol of both humanity's vulnerability and its triumph. But Taemin did not feel like a symbol. He felt like a cargo hauler who had been in the wrong place at the wrong time. June met him at the spaceport personally. "Welcome home, Captain. I heard about Sungho," Taemin said quietly. "About that one. About all of them. They saved us. All of them. Their sacrifices bought time for the rest of humanity to mobilize." June looked at the crowd beyond the security barriers. "You are the reason we remember why we fought. You were the first victim. You represent everyone who suffered. I did nothing but get captured. You survived. That matters." Taemin looked at June, seeing the exhaustion in the commander's eyes. This was a man who had sent thousands to their deaths, who had made impossible decisions, who had carried the weight of a species on his shoulders. "Did we win?" Taemin asked. "We survived," June replied. Sometimes that is the same thing. At the monument on Luna, where Earth hung in the black sky, Hana stood before the memorial wall. 2 billion names were carved into the stone. It had taken months to compile the list. Some names were uncertain. Some bodies were never recovered. But every victim was remembered. Hana found a section for Mars Colony. Her sister's name was there. Her nephew. Her colleagues from the intelligence division. All gone in the first Krithik attack. She placed her hand on the cold stone. "We made them pay," she whispered. "For all of you, we made them pay." Nearby, other visitors stood in silence. Some crying, some simply staring. All remembering, the monument's inscription was simple. They saw us as targets. We showed them why humanity survives. In the Krithak territories, now administered by human oversight councils, former soldiers struggled to understand their new reality. They had been the conquerors, the superior species. Now they worked in factories and farms under human supervision, learning skills that did not involve warfare. Some resented it. Some plotted revenge, though those plots were always discovered by human intelligence. But many, like Nerval, began to see a different path. A path where strength was measured not by how many you conquered, but by how you rebuilt after defeat. The galaxy watched humanity carefully. Trade routes were established. Cultural exchanges began. But every species maintained military forces at higher readiness than before. The Krithik had shown the galaxy that dangerous civilizations existed. Humanity had shown them what happened when you awakened 1.GW, negotiated treaties and agreements, always maintaining humanity's core position. Leave us alone, we leave you alone. But if you threaten us, we will end you. It was not diplomacy as the galaxy had known it. It was a peace enforced by the memory of what humans could do when pushed to the edge. Youngsu's historical record was published simultaneously in 40 languages across the galaxy. It became required reading for military academies and diplomatic schools. The title was simple: The Human War, Why You Should Never Corner a Predator. In the final pages, Youngsu wrote, "Humanity learned many things during the war. We learned that we could unite when survival demanded it. We learned that technology alone does not determine victory. We learned that we were capable of both mercy and ruthlessness, depending on what the situation required. But most importantly, we learned that we were not alone in the universe. And that meant we needed to be ready. Always ready. Because the Krithak were not the first species to underestimate us, and they would not be the last. The galaxy now knows what Earth already knew. Never corner a human being. Never threaten their family. Never assume you have won. Because humans do not fight to win battles. They fight to survive. And they will do absolutely anything to ensure that survival. June stood at the window of his office. Looking out at Earth, the planet was healing. Slowly. The scars would remain for generations, but life was returning to normal. Children were being born. Cities were being rebuilt. People were beginning to hope again. His communication panel beeped. A message from the Deep Space Monitoring Network.